Evening. Welcome to week 3 of Intl 300. I want to start off by just apologizing for what happened in the first week of the class with the confusion with the textbooks and the assignments and the syllabus. Apparently, we were looking at two different things, and I just want to make sure that was cleared up. If there's any issues with that, please let me know. But I think it's been cleared up for everyone. And if there's any other problems, again, just shoot me an email and I can correct it on the spot. For week 2, I'm still missing some assignments. That is unacceptable. If you need to get those into me on time from here on in. I will not be flexible on assignments being late from here on in. In fact, I will just cut you off and I'll give you a 0. So I want to make that clear from the onset. If there's a valid excuse, like you're in Afghanistan, you can't access a computer, or if there's family problems or something, that's fine. But what I will not accept is getting the assignment late with no emails, no explanations. That will get you a quick 0. So with that being said, and the assignment's not very hard for week 2, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to spend half hour, 40 minutes to get that done. So, starting with just reviewing week 2, and the one theme that I hit on everyone in the forum and for the assignments I've marked is you're way too broad. Way too broad. When you write a paper, when you're writing an intelligence document, the best way to look at it is that you have an asset tasked to it. So, for those of you who are in tactical units, if you were in Iraq, you wouldn't want to say, hey, the enemy is out there. You'd want to say, or where is the enemy? That's not a PIR. Your priority intelligence requirement would be, is the Muqtada al-Sadr militia going to emplace an explosively foreign penetrator IED on Route Irish between 1000 and 1400 on this day? That's your narrow perspective that your intelligence can collect on. Your intelligence can't collect on, show me where the next IED is going to be, or tell me where the enemy is. That's not. You haven't done your work if you're coming up with such broad topics, and that also applies to the strategic questions. So, just example. Some of you have written on the drug wars. How can we stop the influx of drugs into this country? That's way too broad. Way too broad. A better information requirement would be how much drugs or how many ounces or kilos of cocaine are coming through the unconventional submarine-based drug smuggling operations perpetrated by the Panamanian cartels. That is a clear, concise research question. And that's the type of detail I'm looking for. North Korea is another one. A bunch of people wrote on. What's going to happen? Now that Kim Jong-il is dead, what's going to happen after the nuclear program? That's great, but those are way too broad. A more clearer question would be: will North Korea build a robust nuclear capability, including missiles, bombers, and hardened facilities after it's tested its nuclear devices? That is a little bit more of a narrowing the question, not what's North Korea going to do next. That's way too broad. So that's the level of specificity I'm looking at. And the best thing to think of is someone is going to have to answer the question. There's going to be some asset, whether it's a satellite, a human source, researchers. Someone's going to have to answer the question, and the question has to be so specific that it can be tied to a specific intelligence asset. So that's what the mindset has to be from here on in. And that was the pretty much theme for week 2. Your questions were way too broad. So week 3, you're going to be developing a hypothesis, and you've seen in the reading, it has to be narrow enough, it has to be testable, parsimonious. You have to say it's going to be right or wrong. It can't just be something like, again, where's the enemy? Because that has too many variables that can lead to it. So it has to be, again, very tightly focused. And I'll comment more on that next week. But again, you saw it in the readings what a hypothesis is, and I'll expect it in your writings. I also expect in your assignment or in the forum, deductive and inductive reasoning. And there's some questions on what is deductive, what is inductive reasoning. And you saw the explanation, but the best way to think of it is when you're doing deductive reasoning, you're starting with an end state. And one of the questions that came up in this decade, does Iraq have WMD? Or Iraq has WMD. Prove it. So you're using deductive reasoning, and then you ask those questions. Inductive reasoning is you're looking at a future problem. So, will Iran go nuclear? That's inductive reasoning, and using the inductive reason to answer that question. Will Iran go nuclear in the future? So deductive reasoning tends to be for present intelligence problems. Does Iraq have WMD? Are the Al-Qaeda in Mali a threat to oil workers in Algeria? Those are intelligence questions that have deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is, in the future, will Iran go nuclear? In the future, will China be a stronger country than the United States? That's the best way to think of it. And there's no right or wrong answer, whether what's right, what's wrong. But the way you solve problems, I'd say if it's in the present, you look at more the deductive. And then again, with the Iraq WMD, let's say you're asked, does Iraq have WMD? Let's go back 10 years and ask that question. So then you would look for those indicators. So Iraq has WMD. I've seen what proves it. I've seen people talk about WMD. I've seen Iraqi soldiers operating in mop gear. I've seen people trying to evade our weapons inspectors on the ground. Those are all deductive points to prove that Iraq has WMD. When you're asking is, will Iran go nuclear? That means it hasn't happened yet, but we've seen Iran stockpile centrifuges. We've seen Iran build missiles. We've seen bellicose rhetoric with Iran. So we see them in the future going nuclear, and that's the best way to put it. That's the deductive, inductive reasoning. See your examples on the forums would be great. And then finally, independent, dependent variables. This is what your assignment is based on. And I've laid it out in the assignment, but the independent variable is the thing that moves. The dependent variable is the thing that stays the same. And just to mean that with a little bit more clarity, let's say I'm starting out with the hypothesis, unemployment causes revolutions. When we had the Arab Spring last year or 2 years ago now, that's what one of the people thought. One of the causations, that there's going to be rioting in the streets if unemployment reaches a high level. And the independent variable is unemployment. The dependent variable is the rioting in the streets or the revolution. And the reason is you can substitute the independent variable. So you could say, does unemployment cause revolution? Yes or no. And then you could say, does dictatorships cause revolution? Does oppression cause revolution? Does media, people having access to Twitter and Facebook and all those social networks, does that cause revolution? Those are you could substitute the independent variables and test them and see if that works. But the dependent variable is the thing that doesn't change. And that's kind of what I'm going to be asking for in your assignment, is to identify the independent. Sometimes there's multiple independent variables, but the dependent variable is what remains steady. So that kind of sums up week 3. If there's any questions or issues, please let me know, and I look forward to your discussion boards.